Welcome to the Generative AI Meetup Podcast, where we dive deep into the essential issues in and around generative AI, with your hosts, Mark and Shashank. Together, we run a Gen AI meetup in Silicon Valley and have more than a decade of experience in tech. We've had the privilege of meeting the smartest minds and learning cutting-edge ideas, and now we're bringing those conversations straight to you.
All right, Mark, we got some exciting news from OpenAI this week. How do you feel about their new O1 Pro model?
Yeah, that is pretty interesting stuff. So OpenAI is doing their 12 days of AI. I think they're currently on day 2. It's been a few days since we've had a podcast last, but today, as we're recording, is Sunday, December 8th. And actually, this is a little bit interesting because this is our first time trying to do this podcast recording remotely. So Shashank right now is in India and I am in the Bay Area. So if there's any graphical glitches, or not graphical, but audio glitches, you'll know why. It's because we're doing this remotely, but we're going to do our best to not interrupt each other. But yes, Shashank, to answer your question, GPT Pro, it's super interesting. So OpenAI, they came out with this new thing, which is not $20 a month, but they decided they were going to 10x their pricing and do a $200 a month plan, which will give you unlimited access to all of OpenAI's best models and tools. So it has unlimited advanced voice mode. It has unlimited GPT-4o, O1 Mini. But the thing that people really care about is unlimited access to the OpenAI's O1 Pro model. So basically, this is a model which I don't think is that interesting of a foundation model, but it's a model that will do some self-reflection and think harder about a given problem. So the idea would be is if I said, hey, ChatGPT O1, I want you to cure cancer. It'll actually think about it for a while. It might do some research. It might hit the internet, do the research papers, all these things, and it'll actually come up with some sort of result. Now, it's not going to necessarily cure cancer, but it's going to try. And I think that is super cool because the problem with a lot of these original foundation models is they will just make a response super quickly. And oftentimes the response will be good, but what you oftentimes want is you want to make sure that these models will return a correct response. So I think that if there is some self-reflection about what you're doing, you may be able to get a better response. So even though it's expensive, and I don't necessarily advise anybody who's listening to pay for it. Well, actually, I take that back. If you are just maybe a scientist, a researcher, an enthusiast, and you want to see what OpenAI could do, yeah, burn the $200 and try it out. I didn't want to spend the money, but if you want to spend the money, get back to us. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, the way I think about it is they started with, GPT-1, 2, 3, 3.5, and once they got to 4, I think they kind of plateaued in the capability of the base model. And since then, they've just been trying to tack on some agentic behavior, some chain of thought reasoning, some step-by-step thinking in the same base model to try to get more out of it. And the GPT-4o model that's available to everyone today kind of is a taste of what this Pro model can do. It's just that the Pro model has no cap on how much it can think. So like you said, cure cancer, solve world hunger, figure out, which JavaScript framework to use in 2024, like these complex, challenging tasks, it can just throw a lot of compute at it. And yeah, I honestly don't know who this would be a good use case for, because the underlying model is still plagued with all the challenges that we've seen LLMs have. It hallucinates. It doesn't have access to the internet. It sometimes gaslights you. Actually, I take that back. The access to the internet is being fixed. It can pull new information, but it's still a limited intelligence underneath. But I guess if it can prompt itself by breaking down the complex tasks into simple enough chunks, maybe the pro model can solve meaningful things. So what was the example that they showed? I think they talked about figuring out a deadlock in some C++ code, right? I'm not sure if you took a look at any of the examples that they had, but some of those
that's right.
seem pretty good.
Yeah, so I would imagine that if you're writing some C++ code, and so for those that don't know, a deadlock is a kind of an advanced concept in computer science, but it's when you would have two programs trying to run at the same time and they will interfere with each other. I don't know how best to describe it, but if you have single-threaded computing, it's pretty straightforward. So single-threaded means one thing runs immediately after the other, but oftentimes when you have two or more things running at the exact same time, you have to get those two things communicating with each other so you don't duplicate work. So oftentimes having multiple threads run at the same time is really hard to debug, not just for regular programmers, but in my mind, a lot of people have a hard time with multi-threading. I have multi-threading, and so I have a hard time doing multi-threaded programming. And oftentimes, when I am trying to fix a multi-threaded bug, it might take me hours if I can even figure out, because sometimes it only happens when it's a full moon and every third Sunday, because they're just so hard to sometimes debug. So if we could have it where maybe you could put in the source code into GPT 4.0 Pro, have it maybe run the code, try some examples, figure out that this deadlock only happens on the full moon on Sunday, that it could figure out the issue and then say, hey, why don't you add a lock or a mutex or semaphore, something here to fix the issue, and then you're good. But yeah, for me, I have a really hard time debugging these things. So if that can make my life easier, I'm all for it.
So one thing I found interesting is in the announcement on OpenAI's website, they gave 10 grants to medical researchers at leading institutions in the US to try to test this out and push the limits of this model to see what it's capable of. And they're all PhDs working on cutting edge research in medicine, for discovery of new genes, for rare diseases, to extract different knowledge about human conditions, research aging, dementia, and cancer immunotherapy. So literally solving cancer. So it's kind of exciting to see these LLMs be used for more challenging tasks. And I think I'm kind of hopeful, maybe not to solve it single-handedly, but to replace maybe an intern that some of these professors would use, or a grad student or an undergrad student that would do like some of the drudgery, to replace that and give like some of these senior researchers dozens of lowly agents that can do grunt work for them.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the thing that's interesting about this is because it does some self-reflection, it's going to make a lot less mistakes. So one problem that I have is I was working on a project yesterday, one of the side projects that I'm working on, and it involved machine learning. And I was using Claude 3.5 Sonnet. And then I said, hey, this line doesn't make sense to me because I'm using 3.5 Sonnet to go and write neural network code for me. And and so basically what my workflow is I'll have it write the code. And then before I actually copy and paste the code into my workspace, I'll go and review the code and try to make sure I understand every single line. And if I don't understand something or something seems weird to me, I will go and ask it. I said, hey, why did you make this line? And then oftentimes it says, oh, you're right to question that line. That line doesn't actually make sense. I wrote that in error. And if I was somebody who didn't know how to program, I would probably get stuck, right? Because I would not know to question certain logic. I would just take it, and then if it had subtle bugs, it would take me forever to figure out what's wrong. But I think that if there can be some sort of self-reflection, maybe you could say, hey, why don't you review your own code or try to run it and then self-reflect on, did this line actually make sense? And then I would assume that if you do that, you'd probably be able to get significantly higher quality code that just has less erroneous stuff, because the code that it wrote actually made sense in general, but for the particular use case that I was doing, it didn't make sense. But I needed to prompt it to say, hey, for this use case, it doesn't really make sense. And it agreed once I said it, and then it made some really good suggestions. But I think that if it could do that self-reflection itself, that's going to help a lot.
Yeah, I agree. And I think these models are kind of getting better because maybe a couple months ago, if you said, oh, hey, I don't think that's right. I think pigs actually do fly, and that is reality. Then the LM would just kind of take it and run with it. But I think they're developing a sense of conviction with what is factual, what may not be factual. And I do think they have a couple other internal chain of thought reasoning loops that they abstract away from us before they give us the output. And that creates maybe like more conviction, more, I guess, truth. But looking at some of the benchmarks for this Pro model, it doesn't seem like an order of magnitude better than the O1 model. In some of the benchmarks, for example, competition code, which is, I assume, like a coding challenge, it just jumps from like an 89th percentile to 90 percentile. It's like 1 percentile difference. But some other things, it jumps from like 64 to 75, which is pretty meaningful. And what I would like to see, which I don't think is captured here, and it's kind of hard to create a benchmark, is complex, open-ended reasoning tasks, like the ones that these medical researchers are trying to use. Like, if you can create a benchmark that asks multiple models to do some kind of business analysis on multiple companies competing in this AI space and compare different kinds of chip architectures or different kinds of models. That is a really complex task. And I think the jump from O1 to O1 Pro will probably be like multiple double-digit percentage points.
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, I would push back a little bit and say that going from the 89th percentile to the 90th percentile isn't a big deal. So on one hand, I agree with you, right? It's only 1 percentage point. But I think that if you think about it, I like to think about baseball sometimes, right? Imagine you are a baseball player and you're batting 400, right? You are one of the best batting players in the world. You're getting paid millions of dollars. And then imagine you're somebody who bats 300, right? So you're still probably a really good baseball player. Actually, you're going to be one of the best baseball players in the world also, but you get one less hit per every 10 bats, right? So if you get one additional hit, you're going to be paid maybe $100 million versus maybe $2 million. Now, $2 million is still a lot, but you're one of the greats if you're batting 400 versus 300. You're just, still one of the best. So I think people will pay a lot more for marginally better. And I think that going from 89%, which is really, really good, to 90%, that's really, really, really good, right? So, I mean, sure, we're not at the 99th percentile, right? But I would argue that even if you're at, let's say, 98%, if you go to 99%, you're going from, I mean, I don't know how to put this. It's just, you're almost way better, right? Because the people who are number one are often only slightly better than the people who are number 100, right? But everybody remembers number one. So it's kind of like this. If you are the best, you get all the rewards almost, because everybody wants the top dog. Everybody wants the JP Morgan to bank with because they know that that bank is too big to fail. Even if some other local credit union does the same amount of stuff that JP Morgan does, people don't want to use them because they're not JP Morgan. They're not number one. They don't have $7 trillion under management, right? People want to work with the people who are number one. Anyways,
I see what you're saying.
that's kind of the point. I don't know, but I think that we shouldn't dismiss these small gains once we get into that 90th percentile.
I agree with you. I can see the big dogs, the hedge funds, the multi-billion-dollar pharma companies throwing as much money as they have on these models to try to get the most out of them. But what do you think about the underlying model itself? So I feel like some of the models have kind of saturated, and every other company is building a similarly capable model. But this new layer of agentic behavior is still pretty nascent. This whole field, we're just kind of trying to figure out what does it mean to build an intelligent agent. I think as awesome as this O1 Pro model is, it's still relatively new. It's a little baby. I think it's going to rapidly improve in the coming months, the next year. 2025 is going to be the year of agents. And I'm excited for all the other companies to push this field forward and to see what kind of agentic behavior Google, Amazon, Nvidia, and not to mention all the Chinese companies and all the tiny research houses like Mistral and the open source world, Meta, comes out with. That's going to be really exciting.
That's true. So speaking of Google and agents, did you see about this new Genie 2 model?
I briefly looked at it. From my understanding, it is a multimodal foundation model that not only understands more than just text, it understands. They were kind of vague about what specifically it does, but it understands video, images, maybe 3D models. And from their website, it's supposed to help train the next generation of multimodal models also. So maybe create training data, if I understand correctly.
Yeah,
Is that
that's
right?
kind of my understanding. So
Okay.
Genie 2 is a new model that's created by Google. It has the grandiose title of a world model, a foundation world model. So basically, my understanding is that it's kind of like a model that can interact with the world. Think video games. Think something like Grand Theft Auto, GTA 5, GTA 6, if that ever comes out. There aren't a lot of AI models that can interact with the world. I mean, there's some, we have self-driving cars, but it's still a really hard problem for AIs to play video games that interact with the world. So I met a guy who I think he actually was working at Google. Then he told me that, and he was actually working on robotics at Google. And he said that, yeah, Mark, there is a big problem that we have, and it's training data. So apparently they go and they pay somebody somewhere to go and put a shirt on a hanger 50,000 times. And they have a bunch of sensors recording that. And then they go and then just watch this person put the shirt on the hanger. Just put the shirt on the hanger, put the shirt on the hanger. You'd probably get some sort of carpal tunnel just by doing what is it? Repetitive stress injury? Just from putting the shirt on the hanger this many times. But it's needed because if you want to have some sort of robot that can go and clean your house, you need to have the training data. So I think that this is Google's attempt at getting training data for their robots. So there's not very many companies working on full-scale robotics. Tesla's one of them. Figure AI is another one. I think Boston Dynamics is another one. I know NVIDIA has a thing for their Project Groot, which does something similar, but this is another one. This is a world model that you can have agents, but when I say agents, I'm talking about, think 3D robot. Think your little Tesla Optimus bot playing GTA 5, right? That's kind of what I imagine. And then this is a world that they can interact with, and then you can generate that training data and then see how does your model, how does your agent, how does your 3D robot interact with the world. So on their website, they show a robot, kind of looks like the Tesla Optimus bot walking around in Egypt, or maybe it would be walking around in some sort of cityscape. So I think this is a really cool thing that will enable eventually us to pass the coffee test. If I talk about the coffee test,
what's the coffee test?
Yeah, so the coffee test, I believe, is a thing that was made by Steve Wozniak, where the idea is you'd be able to have a robot which could go and then just make you a cup of coffee. It would just, you put this robot in the house and then go and then figure out how to make a cup of coffee. So if you think about it, that's actually one of the hardest problems as a benchmark. But I like it because it is it's something you can wrap your head around. It takes 2 seconds to describe the problem, but to actually solve it is super hard. Because you think about how hard it is to make a cup of coffee. Even if you use maybe an espresso machine, some sort of coffee maker, or French press, you might have to do such things as figure out, okay, where is the coffee cup, right? Maybe you have to go and search through the cabinets, figure out, those are plates. Okay, here's the cups. Now you have to go figure out how to grab the cup, put it on the counter. You don't want to break the cup. Then you have to maybe find the coffee ground. Let's even assume that you just bought instant coffee, but you have to figure out, okay, now I found the cup. Now where's the coffee? I have to go put the coffee grounds into the machine. Oh no, the machine didn't have water. Okay, let's go find where the water is. Okay, now how do we get the water from the sink to the machine? Now the coffee machine might be across the room, so I have to go find some sort of pitcher to put the water into the pitcher. Oh no, the water's cold. I have to now go boil the water, put it into the machine, put the coffee grounds in, turn the machine on, put the cup in front of the machine, not break the cup. There's a lot of things that have to go on. And then that also means that you have to maybe navigate around the kitchen, not hit the dog or the children running around, not knock anything over. It's a really hard problem that I think that this is one of the first steps in order to actually solving out how to figure out how to create and solve the coffee problem.
I agree. And especially being here in India right now, uh, seeing how different life is. Honestly, even making a cup of coffee here to my parents' liking is a superhuman challenge. And I can see a completely different being that is not accustomed to our specific nuances with our specific flavor of coffee machine and grounds and everything. It is a non-trivial task. Um, and going back to Genie 2, it seems like it is uh, like a sibling of the VO video generation model because it creates 3D game like environments uh, from scratch. So this entire so the blog post that they have from last week, it shows a bunch of different kinds of video game environments, from robots running around to like a racing simulator to like a horse jumping around to like a boat speeding around in the water with fluid dynamics, um, and complete like robust 3D characters with like a samurai or a robot rotating, and it's very reminiscent of like the Sora demos too, which kind of have like a memory about what is going on in the scene when it has like these object permanence kind of uh, things inbuilt where you look left, you look right, and the scene is very consistent. So I'm still confused about what the use case is because they're targeting it to like uh, people who want training data to train robotics, like you mentioned. Also, like prototyping for understanding game development, for deploying agents, whatever that may be, like robotic agents in the real world. But on the other hand, you have like VO, which is Google's video generation model. And we were talking about this a little bit before the podcast. And, Sora has been hyped for a while. And I remember because they released it on the same day as Google's announcement of like Gemini's million token context window to, ostensibly like get some of the hype away from Google and get people more excited about OpenAI. But we still don't have Sora. And on the other hand, we have like these two super cool models from like Google. Well, the Genie 2 model, it seems like that's still a research arm. I don't think it's publicly available to consumers, but VO is publicly available, like a full-on video generation model, high quality, 1080p with a range of like styles. That is like, wow. I could not have imagined like a year or two ago we would have this right now.
Oh, for sure. It's amazing. And I have to say that I think that OpenAI is hype, right?
So much hype.
They announced Sora, but I think honestly they sort of shot themselves in the foot a little bit because I think they announced it before it was ready. And now, sure, maybe some researchers have used it, but I've never used it. I've never met anybody who's ever used it. It seems maybe there's 3 people that have actually used the Sora model that are outside of OpenAI, and I haven't talked to any of them. So as far as I'm concerned, Sora is vaporware until it's launched. But now, since OpenAI kind of showed their hand, right? Everybody has been trying to catch up. So there are now a few different video generation models that are launched. Google, they have the VO, and actually
Yeah, doesn't Amazon? Yeah.
Amazon, yes, they just came out with a video generation model that I actually was able to use.
Who would have thought?
And
Amazon has been like
it's
this
good.
sleeping
Yeah.
giant in this AI race, but now they've caught up.
Amazon has completely caught up now. So Amazon, I felt a little bit bad because so I work for Amazon and I felt like we were a bit behind. But now I think that we are in the running with all the big dogs. So last week, Amazon had its developer conference and they announced their new Nova models. So the Nova model is comparable with everybody else. It's on the same level as GPT-4o, Google's Gemini model, Anthropic. It's better at some things, worse at other things. You know, it's comparable. It's there, but it's really cool because it has some nice features. One, it can do image generation. That's sweet. Two, it can do multimodal input. It supports a huge context window, 300,000 tokens. So I know Google has their model that is, what is it, the million token context window, but it's not their top of the line one. So
Right.
here we have 300,000. That's really big. That's, I think, even bigger than Anthropic. What is Anthropic? 100,000 or 120,000?
I think it's 220.
But
yeah.
Oh, 220? So this is 300, so slightly better. So that's big. I like that. 200 languages, and also they can do video generation and image generation. In my opinion, the image generation is some of the best that I've seen. I think it's comparable with the Flux models. I was super impressed. I was playing with it a little bit, and I thought the image generation was really, really good. So I generated a model of cats playing poker, and it had a beautiful image of cats with sitting around a poker table, chips everywhere. Now, if you did a little bit of pixel peeping, you could see, oh, maybe the cards aren't perfect looking. I think I saw that if you zoomed in on the card, that you couldn't quite make out, oh, is that a 7 of diamonds or is that maybe a 5 or something? It's a little bit hard to read, but from a distance, it looked amazing. The eyes looked great. Even the hand looked pretty good, in my opinion. So I think these Nova models are really good. And then what you could do is you could take that image that you generated from Nova, and then you can go and then use that as a reference image to create the video. And the video, it's not a long video, but it looks good. And that's before Sora came out. If you would have said that, okay, Amazon would take a year after Sora was announced to come out with their video generation model, that would have seemed about right. So it's kind of a Me Too product. But I mean, it's not even a Me Too product because Amazon now has a video generation model, but OpenAI still doesn't have Sora. So as far as I'm concerned, Amazon is crushing OpenAI in terms of foundation models and video foundation models compared to OpenAI right now. And also, not Sora, but Nova from Amazon is way cheaper. So Shashank and I were running through some numbers, and we found that Amazon's Nova, it only costs $3.2, $3.20 for a million output tokens and only 80 cents for a million input tokens. So what were we looking at? I think it was $10 or something, or 50. It was $10 or $15 for OpenAI's GPT-4o
Correct.
model. So this is a third of the price.
Yeah.
Right? It's almost a quarter of the price compared to OpenAI. So more features, has video output, and it's a third of the price. Yeah, why wouldn't you use Amazon?
Yeah, I kind of have
I mean,
I'm unsure
I think that
about
OpenAI is kind of
the
falling behind
pricing
almost.
because at this point they're all neck and neck. OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic were the three popular ones. Then we had Llama, which got added into the mix. Then there was XAI, which also is catching up. I don't think it's on par with the big dogs yet, but now we have Amazon too. And I really think they're all just different. Depends on what flavor of LLM you want, what kind of personality you want solving your specific task on your specific domain. Um, and also, sure, yeah, pricing. Pricing matters if you're dealing at like really large scale and you want to make some trade-offs. Um, and you really got to just run these models on your specific problem set and see which one is better suited. So I think you're right. Like Amazon is caught up. OpenAI, with its base model, it doesn't seem to have as much of a moat, but we're still on, what was it, day 2 of their 12 days of AI announcements. So who knows, man? Who knows? Like day 12 might be like a mind-blowing AGI announcement for all I know. Probably
Yeah,
not,
true.
but I think I, for one, am excited for agentic behavior from all the other companies. We've seen how much better the O1 model is, not even the Pro, just like the O1 model that we got a couple months ago, how much better that is compared to the regular GPT-4 model. And if some of the other companies, I'm especially looking forward to like Claude, because they seem to be the most pricey and the best model, best for programming tasks, anecdotally the best for reasoning tasks too. It has a pretty big context window, and if we can get like agentic behavior out of Anthropic, I think they might be better than the O1 Pro model too. But regardless, this is such a new field. I think people are still trying to figure out what it means to be an agent. And fast forward like 6 months, a year down the line, and we're just going to be getting unlimited intelligence that we can just run constantly and point it at any given task and have it run with it and come up with amazing insights while we sleep.
Wow.
Yeah. Kahneman. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. It reminds me of that book. What is it? Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow, where there's the system 1 thinking and the system 2 thinking. Yeah, that sounds right. So I sort of think that we're going to have both, right? So I think that for a lot of tasks, it's okay to do something fast, right? Maybe if you're, I don't know, doing customer support, maybe you're trying to automate the McDonald's drive through, right? So if somebody said, "Hey, give me a Big Mac," you don't need to go and think about that for 2 hours, right? That'd be a problem if you did. Everybody'd be annoyed. You want to be able to say, "Okay, we want the Big Mac. We got the side of fries," and then that's it, right? You maybe have a little of the agentic. It takes the customer input and it puts that into the ordering system, right? But if I want to say, "Hey, help me debug this code," it's okay. I can wait 10 minutes while it tries a bunch of stuff, right? That's fine. I mean, it would be nice if we could do it faster, but I can be patient. I can wait. And I think depending on the task, we're gonna want both, right? We're gonna want your super fast models. You're gonna want your Grok, your Cerebrus, your Samba Nova. You want those models to just raw tokens per second. That's the thing that we want. You want your 10,000 tokens per second, but at the same time, you want to go think about it for a while. And maybe under the hood, there's 10,000 tokens a second, but it's maybe doing a billion self-reflections. So it might take a while, right? And that's okay. And
yeah,
I think
I'm
people would be
excited
okay if it took
too.
30 minutes to cure cancer.
As far as I know, I don't think OpenAI
I'd
is using Cerebrus.
I'd wait. That's fine.
I don't think any of the big companies are using Cerebrus except for maybe like the Middle Eastern coalition, the G20. and some private cloud and private companies. But once we have a ridiculous token per second, and we're not that far off from 10,000. Right now, Cerebras is like 2,100 tokens per second. Not that far off. Once we get to insane speeds, agentic behavior, this pro model is not going to take that much longer than the regular GPT-4 model takes today. What do you think that is going to mean for the rest of society, for some of the entry-level jobs, some of the entry-level knowledge work, the business analysis, the researchers, the grad students, or even like programmers, like entry-level programmers, 6 months to a year down the line?
Yeah. So before I get into that, just to mention Cerebras. I mentioned it, but Cerebras is a chip company. They're actually based out of Sunnyvale. We have a really cool interview with Matt from Cerebras. Great one. He's a regular to the meetup. So if you're not familiar with Cerebras, take a look at that. Matt Sue is the episode about that. But Cerebras is really cool. They make some of the world's fastest chips. So they do really fast inference, and they make the world's I think it's the biggest chip you can possibly make. So there is anyways, that's that. You can go into it, but super interesting company. But then, Shashank, to answer your other question about what this means for the world, well, I think that it's going to do a couple things. One is I think it's going to make people a lot more efficient. And I think that if you're already an expert, it's going to make it so that you don't need to hire that new grad student. You don't need to hire that junior developer. You're going to be able to be a lot more efficient. And I think that there is a litmus test that you can do to yourself. So if you're listening to this and you're saying, hey, am I at risk? What you should do is you should try and give the LLM some of the tasks that you do on a daily basis. If you say, hey, this is far surpassing what I normally do, then you may be at risk, right? So if you are somebody who goes to Stack Overflow and copy and paste things, or you just go to ChatGPT, you ask it to, I should say, let's pick the role of a junior developer as an example. So if you're the type of developer and you have a task, you just go and then copy and paste things from the internet. You just go in and blindly copy and paste the things that you generate from the LLM. And you think that the LLM does a much better job than you could do, and you get stuck if the LLM breaks and you don't know what's wrong. Well, you're probably going to be replaced, and you should be concerned. You should be very concerned. But if you are the type of programmer who goes and maybe uses this to accelerate what you're doing, you go through and you understand, you push back against the LLM, I think you're going to be fine for a while, because these LLMs do make a lot of mistakes. They do have hallucinations. I think that while it's true, they're improving. At some point, all our jobs are going to be replaced. For a lot of companies, they can't accept hallucinations. If you are a bank, it's not okay for every line of code not to be understood. That's not okay, right? If you're JP Morgan and you have trillions of dollars under management, you don't want somebody who just copied and pasted some stuff from ChatGPT, right? No, that's completely unacceptable. They will pay more for somebody who actually knows what they're doing. So I think that's the litmus test. Depending on how much you use it to help you, it will help you determine if you are replaceable. But if you're copying and pasting things, if you're a boilerplate developer, you should be afraid. and maybe start learning plumbing or some of the other trades. Because if you don't know what you're doing, I promise you, the trades are going to be safe for a super long time. Just as we said, it's going to be really hard to create a cup of coffee. A lot of humans can create a cup of coffee fairly quickly without much training, right? I could maybe spend 5 minutes and show somebody how to create a cup of coffee if they've never had a cup of coffee before, and they'd probably be able to figure out. But you might be in school for a couple of years to be able to be an actually good plumber or learn how to renovate a house or do electrical work.
Wow.
Those trade jobs, those are going to be safe. But I'm actually a lot more worried about the clerical work. So I may have told this story about in the past, but I had a friend who worked, I won't say the name of the insurance company, but he worked for an insurance company. And this was actually before AI, but it was an insurance company and they did claims. So he wrote with a team of people, he wrote some software for this insurance company. And as soon as the software was done, it made it so that people could fill out their claims much more efficiently, and they could do it through the app, and they didn't need to talk to a person.
Oh my God.
And then once that software was complete, the insurance company fired 4,000 people. So all the people that were doing that, they were just going and manually just raw data entry. They were all replaced by the app. So I think that if you're just doing something that is, you're following the process, you're doing the repeatable thing, you're not actually thinking too hard, you're just blindly following the instructions, you're not actually using your brain for things, you will be replaced, and it will be soon. And it could be any day now. So if that's you, you should be very, very afraid. If that's not you, you're fine. You're going to be fine for a while.
Yeah, I
maybe
feel like
forever.
in
But
this new
in the
world,
short term, yeah,
as opposed
you
to
could be replaced next week.
companies, organizations
So
paying
that's what
for
I think.
human capital, they'll be
It's
paying
coming.
to acquire chips and paying for the cost of electricity to run models or get access to models, pay the license fees for these models, and then again, run them on these chips. So the beneficiaries are going to be chip makers, infrastructure companies, cloud service providers, and the makers of the models, maybe. But honestly, even that, given how comparable all of the models are getting from all the different FANG companies and OpenAI, I don't think they're going to have like a significant moat. The open source community is catching up too. It seems like the chip makers are the ones who are winning here. And the stock market kind of reflects that.
The Yeah, I think that's true, actually, because I think that a lot of these companies, like OpenAI or like Anthropic, I think they are, sure, they're highly valued now, but I've said it before, I'll say it again, the moat around these is going to zero. And I don't know if a company like OpenAI will actually be able to profit from their models. I think they're in a unique position right now where people are willing to pay $20 or even $200 a month for the pro model. And a lot of the same thing is true for Anthropic or Mistral, Gemini, whatever. A lot of people are willing to pay $20 a month right now. But I'm not sure if people will continue to want to pay that much, especially because open source, because a lot of these models are just becoming free, right? Even the GPT-4o model, you can use it for free a lot of times. I think there are people that are allowing you to use the Llama models. You can use it for essentially free. I'm not sure if people are going to want to pay for that upper level base model. Maybe some people will pay. I'm sure in the future there always will be some people who are be willing to pay for the best. But I think for a lot of other people, it's going to be enough, right? I can get AI search results from my Google search, and that is enough, I think, for a lot of people. Even Perplexity, the competitor to Google, I think, yeah, they have the Perplexity Pro, but a lot of people are okay with just the base free one.
Yeah,
And I
for
think
sure.
that
But
we're
go
going
ahead.
to these companies are going to need to figure out some other business model other than just charging for it. For example, yeah, Perplexity, they started showing ads, and then I think Google's going to show ads. A lot of these companies are just going to start injecting ads into LLM. So maybe that's what OpenAI will do.
I
We'll
agree.
start showing
I don't want to say
sponsored
too
links
much
or
about
something,
Google because
but I think that it's just not going to be sufficient
still work there.
just to
But
start charging $20 a month.
I think the space is still so new. This is like the birthplace of the internet, or how it was back then. I think this is going to rapidly change. I think agents are going to take over. I think robotics is still so new. We're going to have physical, embodied beings carrying out our will through some kind of multimodal agent. And we're going to have, companies like Devon AI, that software engineer agent that is worth hundreds of millions of dollars, as opposed to hiring a single engineer for a couple $100,000. And it'll be like the battle of agents. We'll have amazing agents in different verticals. Not to mention, like physical embodied agents. You did mention that trade skills are going to be safe for a while, but I don't know, man. Exponentials sneak up on you, and we may not be too far away from a world where physical robots can be very dexterous and take over any kind of task that a human can. So exciting times. I'm excited for the other 10 days of OpenAI. I think the other announcement was fine tuning, supervised fine tuning, I think, or sorry, what was it? Do you remember? Yeah, it was reinforcement fine tuning research program, to allow you
I don't
to
know.
fine
Something
tune
to do with
these
fine-tuning, but
agentic models
I have to check.
like the O1 Pro on your specific domain and build like the equivalent of a Devon, a super smart software engineer agent, but in your domain. So like law or medical or accounting.
Okay.
So it's going to be exciting, crazy times, and it's still so new, and we have a lot to see.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. You're right that exponentials do catch up fast, but I think that when it comes to physical things, there's a lot of things that prevent exponentials. And I think that's why it's taken so long to get self-driving cars. So for example, we've seen demos of self-driving cars for maybe the past 10 years or longer, right?
Oh, nice.
And we still don't have self-driving cars all over. I mean, sure, actually, to be fair, I did take my first Waymo. I was in LA last week. It was great. Took it a nice 10-minute drive, drove through the city. I was very impressed at how it handled a lot of difficult intersections, but it's still in really limited areas. So I think right now it's in San Francisco, LA, Phoenix, and I think they just announced Miami. So it's coming, it's getting there, but it's still not available everywhere yet. I can't have a Waymo pick me up from the airport. And even if it's possible, I think the laws and regulations won't allow it. So in order to do a lot of these trade jobs, to get back to why I think that the exponentials will take a while for the trade. If you want to be a plumber and you don't want to be sued, there is some actual professional certifications that you need in order to be a plumber. And I think the same is true for an electrician. You can't just have any random Joe Schmo go and do plumbing work for you or electro. I mean, you could, right? But if you want to be certified, it helps to have all those certifications. Now, I'm not an expert on exactly what all those certifications are, but I know that there are licenses that you need to have in order for the trades. And I think that is going to be another thing, which is going to be a barrier to entry for the robots. So maybe at some point people will say, hey, it's okay. We can just have the whatever plumber robot. I think that'll happen eventually, but the legal and regulatory framework needs to be there. And I think that if the human is even 10% worse than the robot, people will probably still trust the human more than the robot. And I think that the robot will need to be an order of magnitude better than the human in order to actually replace the plumber or the electrician or even the taxi driver. Think right now, I don't know how many Waymos, maybe none, have got into an accident. Maybe there's some high profile cases where they're getting into the accident, but if the human driver is decent, people still may not trust the Waymo. I mean, I think I would trust the Waymo. I was very impressed with how good it was, but I think it'll be a while. I mean, it might take another 10 years plus for self-driving cars to completely replace all the automobiles. And I think it might take another more than 10 years, maybe 20 years plus for the robots to replace the trades. So I think honestly, if you're in the trades, if you're getting started, if you're in high school right now, you're looking for something, be a plumber, be a plumber, be an electrician. I think your job's gonna be safe for your entire career. Now I could be wrong. Shashank could be correct on this one, that the exponential could just be there, that it'll catch up, but I don't think so. I think that you might still be able to have a 4-year
this is a tricky
career in the
world.
trades.
I'm not sure.
And then
I see what you're saying.
People still may use the robots.
I guess we'll have to wait and see.
I think you'll be safe. I think you'll be safe for a while.
I do think that people are getting used to AI, especially now with ChatGPT. I think self-driving cars didn't have the mass adoption that they thought it would. Unlike ChatGPT, which, fastest growing product in the world, now it has multiple competitors, and I think people will kind of adjust to this new reality of an artificial, being answering questions for them and helping them throughout every step of the way. And they might be okay with it being a little stupid, being a little incorrect, hallucinating some things, because this is the new normal, and it is still useful. Despite its shortcomings, it's still very useful. But again, 6 months to a year down the line, who knows what we're going to see.
Yeah, I agree with you. But think about this, right? If I ask a question for our research paper and ChatGPT gets slightly wrong, it doesn't matter. No one died. But if I have a robot that's driving me around or doing my electrical work, and if I do the electrical work and it messes up and my house burns down, well, that's not okay, right? And I think that the tolerances, the margin for error is okay if you get it wrong when you're writing an email summary, right? It just kind of how, as we sort of mentioned before in the podcast, where I said, hey, the difference between 90 percentile and 99 is a world difference. I think that in order for the robots to replace the cars and to replace the plumbers, electricians, all the trades, you're going to need to be a lot closer to the 99 percentile than the 80th percentile. And honestly, I think that getting that last 10% improvement is going to be where probably 80% of the work is going to be, maybe even more. And until we get to that point, I don't think that the robots are going to replace the jobs yet. Maybe it'll make it so that plumbers can work with the robots, all that stuff. But I think that for these high stake things, you need to have it where you're operating that 99th percentile, better than humans, superhuman, before people are able to trust it. And just
Yeah, I
because the
agree with you
stakes are
there.
so high,
There are certain domains
right?
where that
You
last bit
can't
of
have a
performance
robot that
is
burns down your
really
house, because
crucial.
ChatGPT is never going to burn down
Like a
your house.
doctor, I don't want
But
a
a robot
ChatGPT doctor
electrician might.
anytime soon. Same thing with an electrician. Same thing with a driver. I need my driver to be focused, 100% accurate. No hallucinations, please. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, but it is an exciting
And yeah,
time, and I'm ready for it.
until next week.
But I think we've been talking for a while, so we could probably end it now. And yeah, I think this was a good one. So thanks everybody for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.